when I finished the live, because remember, I don't have the studio in front of me. I have an earpiece and a cameraman. I remember singing it and I heard nothing after, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that's either gone really well or really bad. I remember asking him the questions. He's, saying, I'm going to be a world champion again. I'm going to fight Anthony Joshua for all the belts. I'm going to win all my belts back, blah, blah, blah. This was about 3 years ago. And it's a bit like, yeah, heard it all before. But he's actually done everything he said he was going to do. And announcing live outside the training ground last year that Gareth Bale had rejoined Tottenham. So there are things I'll always look back on as well, thinking, I was one of those fans in the background and now I'm the one doing it.
To give us an insight into the sports broadcasting industry is Sky Sports' broadcast journalist, Mr. Michael Bridge. Michael, firstly, a huge thank you for joining us. And before we get into a little bit more about yourself, how has work life changed since the pandemic for you? Obviously, your job is completely revolved around meeting people, going to different events, environments. So how was it like to cope with effectively your work life being turned upside down?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, thanks for having me on. It's been a real tough year for everyone, hasn't it? Every single one of us has been affected. In terms of work for me, the traveling has stopped quite considerably. For example, now press conferences, the Thursday or Friday manager press conferences. So I'm more London based, so I'd be going to maybe Arsenal, Chelsea, Tottenham, West Ham, and I'd be traveling there. But now it's done via Zoom. So my cameraman would still go to the press conference, but I would be on this very laptop I'm on now, speaking to the manager, and he'll be replying to my questions via Zoom on here, and hoping that I've got everything recorded, because you don't get really any second chances with these managers. So that's been a real change. But I think we've all seen that change as well. If you look at the whole outlook, Zoom's been fantastic for everyone, professionally and personally. So we've all had time to get used to it. I still am out and about on certain sporting events. Tomorrow I'm on pool. The week later I'm on darts again. And then, before Christmas I was doing boxing. So I had to be out and about for that. But everything, have you got your mask? That's something I never thought I'd hear myself say, but those are things I have to think about now. Have I got my antibacterial hand gel? So there's loads of things that you have to worry that you've got, which you never used to think about. So yeah, massive changes.
It's a case of just before you leave the house, have you got your keys? Have you got your phone? Have you got your wallet? And have you got your mask? That's pretty much what it's been like. But yeah. We'll take it back to, let's say, some simpler times potentially. What age did you know you wanted to go into the job that you have now, and had presenting, reporting always fascinated you, or did it come potentially a little bit later on down the line for you?
Do you know what? Funny enough, I've always wanted to get into this industry when I was about 8 or 9. That's what's always helped me. I was always obsessed with football. At any level. Even though I'm a Tottenham Hotspur supporter, which has always been Premier League, I'd go and watch my local football club, Enfield. I'd watch EFL highlights, the Football League on, late at midnight on ITV. I'd make sure I'd get that recorded on tape. I'd listen to all the radio phone-ins. And I'm going to let you in on something which makes me sound incredibly geeky. I used to write my own football match programs, which it just sounds, the geekiness in me is never going to go. But I used to collect football programs as well. This is part of football, which I've always loved when you go to a game, is to get a program, which is probably going to an extent. You can get them digitally, of course. But yeah, I've always wanted to get into football / sports journalism. And, thankfully, it happened. But it's certainly not easy. But I do believe that having that goal at such an early age, whatever you want to do in life, helps.
The motivation, whether or not you knew it at an early age that you wanted to go into it, but that passion, I think, as you said, no matter what you want to go into, it's imperative, really. And that passion was the same passion that took you on into an incredible journey to work for me anyway, the biggest of the biggest in sport, for Sky. How did that amazing opportunity come about? And although you've had some amazing memories since then, can you remember your first day?
I can remember my first day. I was a runner, um, and just it wasn't necessarily everyone associates a runner with making teas and coffees, but they put me straight in there. And I was always sort of looking. I mean, I think I've been there 13 years now, so I don't remember the specific day itself, but I remember the kind of duties I was put on, sort of researching transfer lines or researching stories, or I remember at the time feeling very part of the team straight away. I just wasn't the kid that would be getting photocopy paper for the presenters and everything like that. So yeah, I mean, it is a long, long, long time ago now, but and the channel and journalism and sport and TV has changed massively since then. But yeah, I do remember it.
Of course, you start at the so-called bottom, but you work your way up, and you've had, as I've said before, some incredible opportunities. But this one is a bit of a personal question for me because it's the biggest topic for me that I really wanted to touch upon. It's the transfer windows, and I know you do a lot of work with the transfers. Some would say it's one of your expertise, if anything. But could you just take me through, and of course, obviously the viewers, but more so me, just for this question. What's it like, especially for deadline day? What's the atmosphere like? And of course, for me, for a fan, I make sure I don't have anything to do on deadline day besides just watching and seeing all the gossip come in and all it unfold. But for you, you've almost have to keep a level head because it's your responsibility and it's your duty to present this news and the sagas that are occurring. So what is it like from your view?
Well, firstly, thank you for that build up, and for a disclaimer, I've not paid you for any of that, so that's very kind. Thank you very much. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, transfers, it is a big chunk of what I've done in the past, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. We all love transfers, and I think collectively we all need to make sure that deadline day becomes a bank holiday. To be honest with you, I think if I'm truthful, I think transfer deadline days were even more exciting perhaps 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago. I think now clubs are a bit more savvy. They get business done a bit earlier. What we love about the deadline day is sometimes the whiff of desperation from certain clubs to do things so last minute. I keep hearing from people the last few deadline days, this is the worst one ever. This was the worst one ever. But just think, in terms of transfers, things have changed a bit more. You see, loans with view to permanent deals, things going on, because there's not the money there was going around anymore. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we've seen that in January, a very quiet window. But whatever happens, deadline day is always exciting. My last one was more quiet than most. I mean, this one I was actually in the Sky Studios. I'm usually outside a football club, but we're very keen on lowering our carbon footprint. So we made sure the majority of our reporters were in our London based. Our northern ones were based in Leeds or Manchester. I don't know what will happen in the summer one, but in answering your question, in terms of a generic deadline day, it's consider the shift 6 a.m. till midnight at least. Reason for that is you wake up, you'll have a text from an agent, a club, a player occasionally, or a colleague. You're on you can't sort of turn over and I'll check this again in half an hour. You have to be on the ball immediately. And then the club you go to, you travel to, you might hear from an agent that they've got some information for you. You have to run it through as a protocol. You run it through the club, and depending on which club, it's how you go about it. Just to let you know, blah blah blah. They can either bat it away, say no, not true, or they might not reply. You give them an X amount of time, how long I'm going to give you half an hour, but if I've not heard anything, we are going to report this. There's certain ways we can deliver this news. Of course, working all together would be great, but everyone has their own interests. My interest is to deliver the news. I personally want to make sure it's right, everything fact. If it's a loan with an obligation to buy, make sure you say obligation. If it's an option to buy, make sure it's option. Others might consider, I just want to get it out there. Let's worry about the nitty gritty later. But then that's where you sometimes trip up. But you've got to work with the club. You've got to work with the potential agent. You've got to work with the selling club. So if the club who I'm working with on that particular day, say, I mean, not me, because I can see a Man United shirt in your background. So say I was working on a deal for Manchester United, but my colleague, that the player who United want plays for Leicester, I'd have to speak to my colleague dealing with Leicester that day. A bit like moving house, really. There are so many chains to get something out there. So sometimes if you see something on Sky which comes out at, I say, 3 p.m, we might have been aware of it at 7 a.m. We've got to get it right. And you've got to get the source right. You've got to trust it. And obviously, there's a lot of transfer lines that don't ever see the light of day publicly, but things do happen. And sometimes they come out afterwards. But in terms back to my day, I've got a phone charger, a portable phone charger. Your diet goes out the window, and expect to be there very late. If I'm on the road, the reporter, I'll be live at least once an hour, probably twice usually, and then obviously more if I get any news. And of course, we are a 24-hour rolling news channel, so we need to make sure that every hour, how can I update this line? Can I update this line? But they still want to go to me because they need to fill it. So what can I tell the viewer which is new? Can I freshen this up? So this is always constant challenges I have to face every single time, because at the end of the day, things don't always change. Is there something else I can tell the viewer? Well, or what benefits does the selling club have, etc., etc. So it's a long day, but it's a fun day. It's a fun day, and it's a real come down the next day of, wow, did that really happen? And you always need the day off the next day. I always try and make sure I'm off the day after. It doesn't always work out that way, but yeah, it's a long day, but it's what we're in the business for. As you've said, transfers you enjoy, and I certainly do too.
Definitely. And just before we move on to obviously a whole variety of sports that you do cover for Sky, what deadline day transfer for you would you say is the one that you look back at as you just said there, wow, did that actually happen? Which one would you say stands out for you?
Being in the studio when I was younger, seeing Dimitar Berbatov join Manchester United, I remember the footage coming in of him being in Sir Alex Ferguson's office, or offices at Manchester United. And obviously being as with my work hat on, I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be amazing footage, when people see he is in Manchester. But the Tottenham fan in me, I was absolutely brokenhearted because he was such a phenomenal player. So I remember that very well, because we have an ingest sort of library department where our footage comes in, then it gets edited, then it goes to television. And I remember seeing the shot of Berbatov with Sir Alex. I'm like, oh no, it's actually happening. So I remember that very well. And that was one of the biggest deadline day signings. I remember for me announcing that Mamadou Sakho was joining Palace from Liverpool. And I remember singing live on air the Electric Rock Down to Electric Mamadou, because they have now bid higher. And I remember singing it live on air, and I don't know why I did it. And I may have been just because I had a bit of a sugar rush then or something. And when I finished the live, because remember, I don't have the studio in front of me. I have an earpiece and a cameraman. I remember singing it, and I heard nothing after. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's either gone really well or really bad. And I checked social media, and thankfully the Crystal Palace fans liked it, and my managers liked it. What the good thing about transfer deadline day, I mean, it's all about balance. You've got to make it entertaining. Never ever say there's nothing happening here. That's the worst thing you can ever say. They come live to you, what's happening? No, nothing. Cheers, back to the studio. But thankfully, me trying to make it entertaining with giving information as well did work, and I did make a complete fool of myself. So there's a couple of things I do remember.
In terms of the moments where you're not reporting and you can just sit back and watch the live coverage, what do you enjoy?
I like boxing, as I said. I like darts, but I mean, I've done a lot of boxing reporting as well, and something I will always look back on is being live with Tyson Fury for his comeback And I remember asking him the questions. He's, saying, "I'm going to be a world champion again. I'm going to fight Anthony Joshua for all the belts. I'm going to win all my belts back. Blah blah blah." This was about 3 years ago, and it's a bit like, yeah, heard it all before. But he's actually done everything he said he was going to do. And that interview is now on YouTube, on the Sky Sports Boxing YouTube. It's his comeback interview, and you won't see me, but you'll hear me. But if I look back on that interview, boxing is a bit like wrestling sometimes, where you say a lot but never actually happens. But he genuinely has done everything he's promised. And of course, he's had his problems in life and mental health. And mental health is always so important to everyone. And we mustn't ever brush it under the carpet, especially with the pandemic at the moment. But he's obviously a great advocate for mental health. But he was in a great place that day, and he's been in a great place the last few years. And he was an absolute pleasure to interview. And I've interviewed, him, and obviously Anthony Joshua as well. And we might be just under a few months, we're months away from the biggest fight in heavyweight boxing history, certainly in modern day times. So, they're always great events which Sky put on as well. So, from a non-football perspective, they're things I like doing as well.
I could only imagine, obviously, you looking back at times like that, in particular the Tyson Fury interview, and watching it all unfold, the comeback, and thinking to yourself, well, he did say that. And obviously, you've mentioned the likes of Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, heavyweights, not just in boxing, but in sports itself. And you've worked with, as we can tell, some huge names in the world of sports. But is there anybody in particular that you look back at, that you've worked with, whether it's an interview or alongside in terms of coverage, that you felt like personally was a real momentous occasion for you to think, do you know what, I have put the work in, and now this is the rewards from my hard work?
I mean, being a Tottenham fan, reporting on the appointment of Jose Mourinho was felt quite special a couple of seasons ago, and then announcing live outside the training ground last year that Gareth Bale had rejoined Tottenham. So there are things I'll always look back on as well, thinking, I was one of those fans in the background, and now I'm the one doing it. But I don't dwell on things a hell of a lot much in the past. I like moving forward. You're only as good as your last live. I always sort of like try and tell myself. I always want to sort of, as much as I'm proud of what I've done, and everyone should be proud of their achievements, but what more can I do? What more can I make myself better? Someone might look at something and say, that was really good live you've just done there, really entertaining. But, believe me, I've got someone as well who would phone me and say, you can do better there. You didn't do that. You didn't do that. So I think all broadcasting's personal choice. There's people out there who say, I like this guy. Oh, no, I don't like this guy. But it's, I always like to look for feedback. It's important to get feedback off people. It's so important not to just look for good feedback. You should always try and make yourself better. So I like doing, as I said, in terms of feeling proud, I was proud to have done Mourinho's appointment, Bale's transfer. I'm always proud to be part of transfer deadline day because they're such huge events. But, I do try to look forward a lot more than the past, because, I think it's important not to dwell too much, but use your past to make yourself better.
It goes without saying, you are so successful within the sports broadcasting industry, but you come across as someone who's very level-headed, doesn't let any occasion sort of dwell on them, and make sure that you put on the best show that you can do. And for someone who's achieved so much in their field of work, what are then the future goals and aims for yourself in your line of work?
That's a brilliant question. I mean, we are in, still really in the middle of a pandemic. There is light at the end of the tunnel with the vaccines, but I think all of us have had to put things on pause, and not to over dwell on things at the moment. If things not necessarily going great for you in terms of the career, just sometimes take a step back, and think of your health and your family and your personal life, which should always come first. So I think goals and everything. For me, I think there will be changes in our industry. I think, the way Sky produce content, I think Sky will look to do different programs. fresher, more social element, a bit like the transfer shows. You said you enjoyed the transfer shows. They're still quite fresh. They're quite new. There were new ideas, with 4 guests, with boxes, quite an American kind of theme, NFL, Good Morning Football kind of theme. But you've seen that now if you see in the mornings, like Good Morning Britain with the 4 boxes. But I think maybe something which I'll be looking to do is, if any programs or any shows are fresh, new, I would like to be part of them, because I feel like I hopefully have the right balance, and I can relate to all age groups and categories. So that would probably be my goal, and always to carry on doing the roles and the work I am doing as a bare minimum. That would probably be my goal for the next few months.
I think it's quite fitting that we end the interview where we started off. You are a Spurs fan. So could we finish on a quick summary of the season so far? And are you Jose in or Jose out?
It's been a really up and down season, to say the least. I mean, I think going out of Europe the other week was disastrous for him and for the club. It looks a very open Europa League, and Arsenal and Man United should look to be favourites for that competition, and it's the easiest route. For Tottenham, it looks an easier route than the league to getting back in the Champions League, and Tottenham need to get back in the Champions League financially. It's so important. Finance has never been so important going forward. But obviously a lot of rival clubs like Arsenal and Chelsea like to mock Spurs as well for not winning a trophy for so long. They are in the League Cup final. So if they beat City next month, sounds like if they beat City, like if they beat the greatest side there is at the moment in world football. But it is only one game, and Mourinho does seem to have an edge over Pep sometimes. But if Tottenham win a trophy, the League Cup, and they finish top 6, that will probably be acceptable this season. Lower is unacceptable, but top 4 would make it still a very, very, very good season. They're out of Europe, so they're only going to have one game a week. There are some Spurs fans who will never, ever take to Jose Mourinho. They just will never take to him because of him, the person, or his links to Chelsea in the past. They just will never take to him. The love for Pochettino. At the moment, the way I see it, I don't see many other managers in the world who could do better right now. I think what's told me and other people is that this Tottenham squad isn't that great. Harry Kane, phenomenal. Heung-min Son, excellent. Gareth Bale, when fully fit and on it, excellent, but we're not seeing that enough. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, very good. Reguilon, very good. After that, that's where I'm looking and thinking, does this player get in the top 6? Does this player get in their top? That's when I'm starting to worry and ponder. The problem is Spurs didn't replace the players who left properly. Kyle Walker, Moussa Dembele, those kind of players, and Christian Eriksen. So recruitment is the key. I've seen it with Leicester. They've bought well. Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes, probably the best signing they've made in around 10 years, if you ask me. But one thing that always gets me is they say, Spurs about Harry Kane are nothing, aren't they? I say, well, yeah, take Van Dijk out of Liverpool. Let's have a look how they get on. Oh, well, we're having a look right now. Always take your best player out of a football team. They're not going to be as good. So I don't really buy that. So I think Mourinho it's not gone great. Do I want him out? No. This still could be a good season for Tottenham. So we'll have to wait and see.
It's been nothing short of a pleasure having you on the Content Podcast to get an insight not only to you, but the amazing industry you work in. Best of luck for the future. And for your sake, let's hope Tottenham reach the top 4.
Thank you very much for having me. My pleasure.
And thanks to everyone who has watched or listened to today's podcast. As always, please be sure to like, subscribe, as well as follow on all social media for more content by The Content.